Hey, Anastasia from No Grey Suits, and I'm going to run you through doing a quick DIY audit on your social media platforms for your business. So I'm going to skip over the Get Started guide, the Get Started page, because that's just for people that don't have the video telling them what it's all about. So first thing I want you to do here with this checklist is to go into each of your social media channels. Now, this is mostly geared towards LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, but a lot of the tips will be able to be used on other platforms as well. I just wanted to keep this sort of short and snappy. So first thing, make sure that your social handles and your names of your accounts are on brand. So I know that it's not always possible to get the exact same handles across all of the platforms. I, for one, my No Grey Suits Instagram handle is different to my Facebook handle slightly, because my Instagram one, if I wanted the same, nice and simple, is taken, and I can't get in touch with the woman, and she's not posted on there in years. So I don't think I'll ever actually get that one unless Instagram take it off her for some reason. But try and make sure that they're as consistent as you can and recognizable. So, whether it's your name or whether it's your business name, try not to make it too out there, too different to what people are used to seeing from you. Same with your profile photo. If you are a one-man band or your business is very structured around you rather than the business itself, if you sort of are the business, a lot of the time a professional profile photo of you that is on brand, so in your brand colors, that kind of thing, is the way to go. And for other businesses, so it depends on the business, it might be having your logo there. So for me, for most of mine, I've got a photo, but for one of my clients who is a jewelry business, she has, even though she is pretty much it in her business, she has the business logo because that's recognizable for her. Cover photos, the right sizes on each platform. And what I'll also add in here is making sure that your cover photo looks good on mobile as well as desktop. I've been guilty of this myself in the past. It's very easy to do. Design this gorgeous cover photo and not see how much of it is either covered up by the profile photo or cut off when it turns onto the mobile app, and it just looks ick. Same the other way around. If you've designed it and done it on mobile, make sure that it still looks okay on the big screen as well. Think about your bio or your description. Think about it in an SEO way. So when I say that, make sure it says what you do and who you do it for. Make it for the customer, not for you. And think of it as a search field, in that, what are people searching for that you want to come up in the results? So all social media platforms are search engines. Google isn't the only search engine out there. They all are. Somebody searches for something on Instagram. Somebody searches for, I don't know, woolen dog coats on Instagram. If that's what you want to come up for when they search for it, you have to put it somewhere. You have to let Instagram know that that's what you want to be known for, that you want to come up in those search results. It's obviously not guaranteed, but if you think of it with an SEO hat on, then you'll do much better at actually driving some organic search results through to your profile. Make sure your link in bio is correct. Now, link in bio, I use that sort of almost tongue-in-cheek. Where possible, point them towards your website rather than using the actual link in bio thing. It worked really well for a while, but more recently it has started not just dropping in popularity, but people are kind of a little bit sick of it and would rather just go to your website, we're finding. So I've recently changed mine over as well, but make sure that it's correct, make sure that the link works, make sure that it's not going to a page that needs logging in or anything like that. If you're wanting them to be sent through to a sales page, just check that it's all up to date. And website everywhere. This one's not as relevant for Instagram, but definitely for the others. Anywhere that gives you an opportunity to put your website in, so any fields that give you that opportunity, put it there, because you don't own your following on social media. the social media businesses do. Facebook does, Meta does, LinkedIn does, TikTok. What you want to do, what one of your main goals should be, is actually getting those clients, getting that audience onto your email list. So that means that you want to get them off the social media platform, says the social media manager, and onto your own website to get them onto your email list. You own it. Make sure everything's on brand. That comes back to your photos and your cover photos, things like that. Just make sure everything sort of looks like your business is recognizable. Like, for instance, my colors are all fairly bright and almost gary, sort of rainbowish. If I suddenly started putting out, if I started mixing in a bunch of sort of muted, desaturated images, probably wouldn't look quite right. I have tried it because I use my Instagram as a testing ground, and yeah, I was quite right. Anything that I do put up that is outside of my usual sort of look and feel doesn't do quite as well as the stuff that does. My own followers don't recognize it as being me. Make sure your contact details are up to date. I see this too often. I'll click on a link, or I'll click on an email address, or I'll go to ring somebody and the details aren't up to date. We tend to sort of set that up at the very beginning when we set our profiles up, and we never go back to it. LinkedIn is really bad for this. So check your profile as well as your page, because your profile is the one that people are more likely going to head to than your page. So make sure that your contact details on there are up to date, not necessarily an old Gmail email address from 10 years ago that you might have used last time you were job hunting. And a little tip there, while you're in there on all of your social platforms, check who has access to what. You might have ex-employees or an old social media manager that is still listed as an admin. Take them off, set backups in case you do lose access to something. Take note of your account recovery codes, and just do a bit of a security cleanup in there. Turn on 2FA if it gives you the opportunity to. I know it's painful, I hate it, but at the same time, it saves you. The last thing you want is to lose your business pages by either losing access to them or having them deleted or taken over. Next one, your content. Obviously, this is the stuff I love. Are you posting engaging content? Is it what your audience actually wants? So when you're thinking about content, don't think about you. Think about what your audience wants. Now, sometimes that can take a bunch of research to find out what they actually want, and it can take a bunch of trial and error as well. But sort of think, are you using a combination of types of posts to see what works best with your audience? Now, everybody knows that, there's been a big push towards video in recent times. But what we're finding is with some industries and with some audiences, carousels or static graphics are actually performing better than some videos. So doing a mixture of content and keeping an eye out for what's working and what's not. And even if something's working today, if videos are working great for you today, don't think that you're going to have to do videos forever, because in a few months' time, that tide might turn and you might want to try out, you might find that your video engagement's dropping, and you might want to try out static posts or carousels again. But if you continue to mix it up, you'll always kind of know what's outperforming what, rather than then being on the back foot of all of a sudden having an underperforming account because you've focused in on one specific thing and ignored the rest. Do your posts evoke emotion or provide value? The emotion that I like to evoke most of the time is humor, fun, laughter. With mine, just because I kind of like to make people smile. I know I like to laugh. Most things you can find a relatable truth to, and you can be a little bit tongue in cheek. You know, most audiences like to smile. You've just got to find what makes them smile instead of cringe. And I love this quote. When we create something, we think, will our customers thank us for this? Now, Anne Handley is one of the biggest and best in the digital marketing world. And that quote I like to keep in mind when I'm creating content, not just for me, but for my clients as well, is the audience, are the customers going to find some sort of value? And value includes that emotion piece as well. It doesn't have to be educational value. It's if it makes them smile. Does it tell them a story that they like to hear? So always have a think of that. Your content's not for you, it's for your customers. And are they going to like it? Are they going to find value? Are they going to thank you for it? Next, consistency. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why people hire social media managers is just not having the time, the inclination, the, you know, the love of it to be consistent enough. Now, at first, you need to, exactly what it says here, determine the optimal posting frequency for your audience and stick to it. So there's no point putting together a plan that is for, 4 or 5 posts a week and only doing it for 2 weeks and then letting it drop off. But you've also got to start to work out either from looking at your own insights or looking at what you can find online in general guidelines for your industry, for the platform, for the audience that you're after. What times and days work best for your audience? When are they more likely to be engaged? Because engagement is what drives the algorithm. If people are engaging with your content, the algorithm wants to show them more. If they're not engaging, then it sees it as almost useless content. And then create your calendar. Once you've got the data, love research, create your calendar. It'll need tweaking in the future. Things change, just like preferences between types of content change. Best times to post, best days, best frequencies, they change as well. So check in with it every now and then, but make sure you stay fairly consistent with your posting. So, even if week 1 it's 3 posts, week 2 it's 4 posts, week 1 again 3 posts. But as long as you're posting fairly consistently, you'll start to show up in people's feeds. Again, this one is a really general, I hesitated putting this here, but I knew people would want it. A really general guide based on a bunch of research across all industries. I did research from all of the big social media players and all of the big marketing players. I pulled it all together. And this was the general sort of consensus, but that big fat asterisk there, this is a really simplified, generic version. You really need to find out what works for your audience, because think about it, if your audience are busy corporates that are on the train heading into the city between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. every morning, and that's when they're playing on their phone and that's when they're scrolling through and that's when you want to grab their attention, that's very different to your mum who only works school hours, who at that time of the morning is busy getting the kids up and ready. So your best times, best days, best frequency is really going to depend on your audience and when they're online and where they're online. So as a very, very, very general, very, very, very generic guide, Facebook 1 to 2 times a day. I actually probably call that a bit too much for most businesses, but that could, in my mind, include stories. And with stories, go for your life. They disappear in 24 hours. People click past them if they don't want to see them. It's very different to having it on your wall. Best times, they say 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. For Facebook. Now, across the whole population, that might be about right. Just because of who hangs out on Facebook, we do find a lot of those, as I say, those mums whose free time is while the kids are at school are on Facebook. That seems to be a lot of the demographic there. Instagram 1 to 3 times a day, so a little bit more than Facebook. Again, might be overkill if you're not including stories there. If you're including stories, then yeah. Best times, weekdays 11 to 1, and then in the evenings around 7. Now, in my experience, I normally push that out a little bit so that it's, after dinner rather than during dinner. But, it again depends on your industry. LinkedIn, frequency is a lot less, but I will say this about LinkedIn. Not many people are posting on there compared to the others. So if you're posting at all, you're doing better than most. Best times are Tuesday to Thursday, so middle of the week, as opposed to the top and tail of the week. Nobody likes Mondays, and everybody has checked out on Friday when it comes to the LinkedIn world, which is typically more B2B. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So generally when they're actually at work, and then when they're on their way home from work, 5 to 6. Or if they're late workers, they're probably faffing around on socials as opposed to actually doing work, because by that time of the day they're over it. Okay, metrics. Metrics. So what should you measure? What's a vanity metric? You've probably heard that buzzword out there. So when you're managing your socials, you need to know the difference between what is a vanity metric, and I'll explain what that is in a sec, and what is a metric that you can actually take action on. If you count your reach or traffic or impressions on their own, and if they spike up and look fantastic, it can really, really boost your ego. If your engagement isn't spiking at the same time, you're not going to convert too much as a general guide. And if you check out my reels or on YouTube, there is a little video that I've done on that, and on what the head of Instagram and works at Meta, Adam Mosseri, says about the difference between watching just your follower count or watching just your impressions count versus actual engagement. So I'm not going to go through all of that in heaps of detail, but the idea is that vanity metrics, they look great, but they don't always provide insight into how well it's actually doing for growth and for conversions, which is ultimately why we're all here, right? We've got to make money. Whereas things like actual conversion rate, obviously, engagement rate, like I say, and click-through rates, they're the ones to really keep an eye on. If you see those going up, you can start to feel really good about yourself. And it's not just mirror, mirror on the wall. Using your metrics, set your goals. What do you want to get out of this? Are you looking for sales? Are you looking to grow your email list? Are you just looking at the moment to build a community? What insights can you actually make use of? So, if you're looking to increase your sales, you would be looking at your conversion rate and your click-through rate, because you want to get them onto your website to convert those sales. Avoid the vanity metrics, which we just covered, and then analyze and adjust. Sitting still in marketing, there's a great quote, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's basically, if you're not analyzing, if you're not adjusting, if you're not reviewing things constantly in these spaces, you're going to be out of date. The strategies that you use today won't necessarily work tomorrow, because these things change so quickly. So you've got to keep an eye on your analytics. You've got to keep an eye on your data, including not just your own data, but the data out there in the rest of the world as well, about what's working and what's not. This one, I would highly recommend getting a CRO, or conversion rate optimization audit. Just Google, you'll find people that do. I can refer you to people that do if you like. But you've got to make sure that where you're sending these people, where you're sending this audience to, is actually somewhere they want to be. Does your website work properly? Does it load? Do all of your links work? Is your checkout process working? Or does it hang? If you've got PayPal there, is it connected up properly? Can you actually accept payments? Because, again, we're all here to make money, right? Is your copy easy to read? Have you got call to actions throughout? Do you have something where they can put their email address in to be added to your email list, which you own? Then there's your funnels. So this is, when you're in social media management, this is kind of how, there's a few different ways of doing it, but this is kind of the basic big overarching strategy of, your top of funnel is people that you don't necessarily know, or the people that don't know you. And this is where you need to catch their attention. So whether that is by drawing out emotion, whether that is by being a little bit different, whether it's hitting them at just the right time, if you're using competitive analysis type stuff. But this should be about 50% of your posts, is getting new eyes onto your brand. Your middle of your funnel, or MOFU, is where you earn people's trusts. It's where you start to show social proof, so testimonials, case studies, founder stories, teach people something, do tutorials, that kind of thing. And then your bottom of the funnel, sorry, that's about 30% of your posts should be that. Your bottom of the funnel, super important, but don't do too much of it. This is where you actually sell to people. So this is your lead magnets, this is your promotions, your sales, this is where you put your calls to action. Don't do too much of that, otherwise you're just a sales page. You're not actually providing value to people. So that's a really, really rough sort of guideline to your tofu, mofu, bofu. That's not what the audit sort of thing was about, but I thought I'd pop that in there just to sort of let you know if, that, especially that percentage, 50% top of funnel, 30% middle of funnel, 20% bottom of funnel. If you're weighted too far in, either direction, then you might find that your conversions or your conversion rate is suffering a little bit, or your click-through rate is suffering a little bit. You might even find that your followers start dropping if you start to do too much bofu stuff, because they just feel like they're being constantly sold to. Anyway, that is it for me. I've rambled on enough. If you have found this useful, follow, like, book a session, all of the rest of those fun things. And as you can see there, what I mentioned before about how my handles are ever so slightly different on each one of those. Darned availability. Anyway, if you do have any questions, please let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. Either way, love to hear from you. Take care.